Hello, Year 2. As you know, I'm here to talk about my job as the leader of the Ladygrove Church. So without further ado, I'm going to start up a little PowerPoint. Work of the Vicar is what I've been asked to talk about. And before we start, I just thought I'd need to explain. I dare say if anyone was to ask you, well, what does Mrs. Barrett do for a job, or what does Miss Thomas do? You'd all say, oh, they're a teacher. If you asked people what I do as a job, even those who are part of the Ladygrove Church, you would get different answers because there's various names for being the leader of a church, and each name sort of says something about their understanding of what I do and part of my role. So I'm just going to use those names as a sort of bit of an explanation. So firstly, vicar or priest comes from a word vicarius, which means acting for another or doing something on behalf of another. And to explain that, sort of, if you imagine, I'm not saying God's a sort of this thing in a cloud. I believe that God's all over the place, all around us, but we just can't see him. And people here on the ground, let's say. Now, there's times that people want to have some sort of engagement with God, but feel that they can't do it themselves. So it might be they need to say sorry to God for something that they've done, and they might ask me to help them to say sorry. Or it might just simply be a prayer for something else. So, for example, somebody might say, oh, my Auntie Gladys isn't very well. She's in hospital at the moment. Can you pray for her? And as I say, anybody can pray, and there's no special words. We just chat to God like we chat to anybody else. But some people like me to sort of do the prayer for them. So I sort of act like a go-between between the people and God. And not only that, I almost act like a go-between between God and people, so that if someone says sorry to God, then just like if you were to say sorry to me, you'd like me to sort of say, oh, okay, you're forgiven. So I sort of say the words for God that says, okay, you've said sorry to God, he forgives you. And then also what I do on a Sunday when I'm preaching, when I'm teaching from the Bible, I'm taking God's book, the Holy Bible, which is 2,000 years ago, and sort of saying, right, well, this is what his teaching said to those people then. What does that mean to us today in 2020? And so I'm sort of acting on behalf of God to sort of say, right, that teaching still applies. It's just now in a different context because of the 2,000 years that have gone by. And I guess the idea of being vicar, being sort of go-between, shows up particularly in what I call the sort of life events that we celebrate. So when a baby's born, people like to say, oh, thank you for the baby, and they might like to sort of dedicate the baby to God, or christen or baptize the baby. And so I will do that role for them. I'll sort of say to God, thank you for this baby, and help the baby to grow up well. And on behalf of God, I will sort of say, well, you know, God loves this baby and recognizes that they're really special and wants the baby to grow up. Then for weddings, where a couple want to declare their love, if they want to get married in a church, I will sort of be the go-between where I help them to make promises to each other and also promises to God. And so I will lead them through some special words, and similarly we'll sort of say, like, God thinks you're really, really special and thinks marriage is really important, and he wants you to have a really happy life together. And then another life event, which is a more sad one, when people die, you know, we like to come together for a funeral to sort of be thankful for that person's life, but also to sort of say that we're really sad and that we're going to miss them. And so I may never have met the person who has died, but I sort of act on behalf of the family and friends to sort of help them to think about being thankful and needing help to cope with their loss. So I do all that as part of my role as a vicar. And I don't only represent God to the people and the people to God, but I also represent the Ladygrove Church. So you see there's badges of All Saints School and Ladygrove Park Primary School. Because I come in, I do assemblies, I sometimes do RE lessons like this, and I'm doing it on behalf of the Ladygrove Church. It means if I'm freed up to do that sort of work, it frees them up to do other things, to do other ordinary jobs that suit them. And then the other image is a coat of arms of the Didcot Town Council, because there's times when councillors might sort of say, right, well, we're thinking of doing this is what we're building, or these are the transport ideas we've got. What do you think the church thinks about this? And so I represent the church. Or I'll put the question mark there, because sometimes I might get a phone call from a radio station or something like that. Okay, this is happening in the world, or this is happening in your area. What does the church think about it? And so I'm answering on behalf of the church. I'm not just simply saying my idea, and that's quite a responsibility, because sometimes I might be quite cheesed off about something that's gone on, but I've got to sort of think, right, well, I don't want people to think that the church is a right bunch of grumpy people, even if I might be grumpy at the time. So I've got to sort of try and represent the whole church. Another name I get called is pastor, and that pastor comes from a word that refers to these guys, to shepherds. That the Bible talks about God being our good shepherd, but then also says that the leaders of churches ought to be good shepherds. And when you think about that, you think what a shepherd does to look after the sheep, make sure the sheep grow and are safe and are fed and can really, well, become as good as they can be. And the whole idea is that as a church leader, I should sort of try and treat people not like sheep, but I should have that attitude of trying to help them to grow fit and healthy, and so and well, not literally feed them, but help them to understand what God's hopes are for them, so that it creates a community where we care for each other, and no one feels as though they're left out or harmed. And just like a shepherd has just a particular flock that he looks after, so in my role as church leader, I have not so much a flock as an area to look after. So you can see there's a green line that goes around. In that area, that's everyone there is my responsibility. Just to give you an idea, there's All Saints School, so you can see where we are. And so anybody who lives in that area, works in that area, passes through that area, is my responsibility. And that includes even those people who might say, I don't believe in God, I'm not interested in the church, in fact, I really don't like the church. They're still my responsibility as far as the church is concerned. So I pray for them, and I'm there for them if I need. And you see that there's two sort of fairly clear white areas at the moment, these two. Well, you may have noticed if you've gone past those areas, there's building going on there. There's going to be lots more houses, lots more people moving into the area. And just like if a new lamb was brought into a flock, and the shepherd needs to make sure that lamb is cared for and protected and accepted. So I see part of my role is to help newcomers to the area to feel part of the community, to feel welcome, to feel that they've got a part to play, and that the community is interested in them and wants to support them. So we're at the moment sort of thinking, how can we do that to make people feel welcome, have maybe some parties and stuff to help people get to know one another. So just some of the pictures of things that I do on a regular basis as part of my job. We meet in your school hall, or we did until lockdown happened. And so on a Sunday, people need a seat to sit on. So one of my roles, I'm not the only person that does it, but I do it regularly, is to set out seats and put up the screen and projector and set up the PA system so that we can meet and have Sunday services. So that's one of my roles. The middle picture here, that's me running a quiz night. Quiz nights are good fun to help us have a giggle and get to know one another. And the lady there with a very interesting hat, she's a lady who works in Peru, working with families. And so we invited her along to come and talk about her experiences, to give us a wider picture of the world. It's very easy living in Didcot. You could, if you just focused on our town, get quite a sort of narrow view of what life is like. So that was helping them to learn about the world, what's going on. Then in the middle row, here's me, and we run a toddler group on a Wednesday and Thursday. And I just go along and sort of see what I can do. So here I'm reading a story with some of the children, but other times I will be talking to the mums or dads, or making a cup of tea and coffee for them, or doing some washing up, just making sure that the group that we run runs smoothly and people feel welcomed and people feel they can share their worries and concerns and that they'll have a listening ear. Certainly here in the middle, this is me just welcoming a family into the church, and so again it's doing little things that make people feel like they belong and that we're interested. Well, we are interested in them and God's interested in them. You can't see me in that picture because I'm in this little puppet theatre here with my hand Matthew the puppet. One of my roles, I guess, is, as I say, is about teaching, helping people understand God's ideas for them. And I recognise that we all learn in different ways. So some people can read books, some people can learn from watching a film or something. Some people like other more interactive ways. So we use things like puppets and other things as ways of thinking about God and his plans for us. In the bottom left-hand corner, this is me at one of your summer fairs. Another of my role is just being part of the community and playing whatever part I can to help things along. And it just so happened that the way I could help in that particular day, is by being in the stocks and having lots of wet sponges thrown at me, which was all good fun and stopped me having to have a shower for the next week. But yes, I'll have a go at anything. In the middle picture here, on Facebook, I noticed several people complaining that some of the footpaths on the estate were overgrown and people were having to risk their lives by stepping out into the actual roadway. And so I said, well, rather than simply complain about it, how about we come together and do some cutting back of the bushes? And so we did. People from the Ladygrove Church, but people from outside the church, we just all came together and we cleared the path. And so we helped the community. Now people were safe to walk along that road. So yeah, anything that's like that we can get involved in, or I can get involved in, I'll have a go at. And then in the bottom right hand corner, that's me serving, I think, breakfast that time in our dining room where I'm doing this filming. There's a lot of eating that goes on. Well, let's face it, we all need to eat. And so it's a great way of just getting to know people and showing interest in them. So we regularly have meals at our house with others, just to get to know them, have a chat about them, and see how we can help the community. So they're just some pictures of things that I get up to. It's very varied. There's lots of meetings with lots of different people, but loads of different things that I do. No 2 days are the same. My final name for what I do is minister, and that's not so much say things that I do, but rather my attitude when I do them. We all have seen sums like that, and we will probably all recognise that little symbol there, minus. And you'll notice minus is very similar to the beginning of the word minister, and there's that whole idea that a church leader is meant to sort of be someone that's, or another word, less than other people. When Jesus was on earth with his disciples, he looked around and he could see sort of the Roman leaders and the governors of the areas, and this is what he said: they get all high and mighty and let everybody know it. They throw their weight around. And let's face it, we can see people today in leadership that might be a little bit like that. And then he turned to his disciples and said, but that's not how it's to be with you. If any of you wants to be great, he must be your servant. And actually, some people say the word that Jesus actually used, that we've translated as servant, possibly means more slave. In other words, somebody who wasn't paid, who simply did the work. And then just before he went to the cross, Jesus had a meal with his friends. And during that meal, he got down on his hands and knees and he washed their feet. Now, that was usually the job for the lowest of the servants, because in the evenings when this took place, people by then would have had pretty smelly feet. They didn't have shoes and socks on. They just went in open sandals and got really dusty and horrible. And so it wasn't the job for the leader, really. But Jesus did it and then said to his disciples, this is an example I've set for you. This is how you're meant to be. And so I recognise that really, as the church leader, I'm meant to be like a servant or a slave in the way that I help other people. Things that I use in my daily work, well, the Bible is a real biggie. As I say, this is the book that is really special for me, and I think what God's given us to sort of work out what life is all about. And so I use it to read every day to sort of get an understanding of God's hopes and plans for me, but I also use it when I preach and when I come in and do assemblies at school and things like that. So, if people ask me any questions, I will say, well, what does the Bible have to say about it? So it's a really important book. And then there's other books. There's loads of things like this that I use. That's just a book that's got loads of different services in and lots of ideas of prayers and things that I might use to help me lead services on a Sunday. But I've got loads of books on lots of different topics about what other people have said about the Bible, or what people think the Bible has said about various things in life, as well as ordinary books as well. And then DVDs, well, some of the older children in All Saints will be aware of these DVDs. I use these at a club we have on a Tuesday at All Saints, where we look at what the Bible says. But I also use loads of different DVDs. A couple of years ago, we looked at Moana, the Disney film, and sort of said, right, well, what does that have to say about life? And what does the Bible have to say about those things as well? So I use lots and lots of DVDs. I love them. Great way of sort of exploring important things. And then clothes, you'll see I've got my dog collar on, which is not very comfortable, but it's just a way to say to people that I'm a church leader, just like you wear your uniform as a way of saying you're part of All Saints School. And then you will have seen in some of the photographs, sometimes certainly when I'm up at All Saints Church, I will wear my robes, my long sort of clothing. Again, it's just a way of saying that I'm the church leader. I must admit, I'm much happier in a t-shirt or a sweatshirt and jeans, but sometimes I have to be identified as something special. My laptop, well, I can't show you that because I'm using it at the moment to record this, but I'd be lost without that really. Obviously, I keep a lot of information on there, but also use it for things like when I do assemblies, when I do services, when I record things through Zoom, as we're doing at the moment. So it's very handy for things. Diaries. Oh yes, I've got my book type diary, but also got a diary on my phone, because if you imagine, there is, I have contacts with so many different people and so many different things going on, that it's important to keep a record somewhere of what I'm doing. Otherwise, who knows, I might end up not being where I ought to be when I need to be there. So I'd be lost without my diaries, both as paper and phone. Right, one last thing I want to say really about minister. I did some, when I was training to do this job, I spent some time at a hospital, and the minister there said something that I thought was really important about what a minister should be. He said a minister should be approachable. In other words, I recognise that a lot of people don't know me. A lot of people might sort of want to speak to me, but think, oh, what's he going to be like? So I need to be someone who's welcoming, who, even if someone has never spoken to me before, feels that they will be accepted, and they can approach me and talk to me and ask me questions. And I'll be honest and open with them. So I need to be approachable. I need to be available. It's no good me sort of saying, well, I'm only going to work 9 to 5. If someone needs me, whatever time of the day, whatever day of the week, then I need to be there. I can't sort of say, well, come back next week. I'm on my holidays or something. So, yeah, I wouldn't say 24/7, but I do get phone calls late at night. Sometimes I've had 1 or 2 in the middle of the night. So I need to be, available when a person needs me. And then an interesting one, as well as approachable and available, need to be avoidable. As I said earlier, some people, I understand, don't believe in God, don't like the idea of the church, and it would be unfair for me to be in their face. So I'm here, and I'm here available if anyone needs me, but equally I need to walk as though I recognise that some people sort of say, I just don't want anything to do with you, and accept that for what it is. Okay, questions. Thank you for the questions you've asked me. really love answering them, so let's have a go. When did you start leading the Ladygrove Church? That's an easy one to start with. I moved here and started in September 2005, so I've just done 15 years here. How do you like working here? Yes, I do. I like Didcot. I like the people, so I really enjoyed it. I love school stuff. I trained in Sheffield, which is on the edge of the Peak District, and it's called the Peak District because they've got some seriously big hills, and I do miss them. They're written in clumps. Doesn't quite do it for me. I like bigger hills than that. What parts make you the happiest? I'm not just saying this, I do love coming into school. I like working with children. I find children like your good selves ask me questions that are really on their mind, and I like that, so I can answer them. I sometimes find adults don't like asking questions, just in case people might think they ought to know the answer and they're a bit worried about being made to look stupid, and that's not the case. You know, I think if you've got a question in your mind, however easy you think it might be or however hard it might be, it's worth asking. So yeah, I do like the fact that children like yourselves are more than happy to ask anything, because nothing is out of bounds as far as I'm concerned. And something else I like, I guess, is when someone suddenly discovers for themselves just how much God loves them. I think we live in a world where we're told you've got to have the right perfume and you've got to have the most up-to-date phone, otherwise you've got phone envy, and you've got to drive this particular car, and you've got to earn this amount of money, and you've got to have this size house, and your dad's or your mum has got to have sort of this type of work and what have you. You've got to go to this shop for your clothes or your food or what have you. And that can sort of give us the impression that if we don't manage to have all those things, that we're nothing, that we're somehow less than others. And that's not what God says. He says we are all equally precious. I am as important as the Queen or as Boris Johnson or Donald Trump to God, even if they might think they're more important than me. And when someone discovers that for themselves, it's like them sort of pushing off the chains that have held them back. And to me, that really is a great joy, watching them discover that for themselves. It gives them freedom. Why did you want to become a leader of the church? I don't think I did. When I left school, I wasn't a Christian. I didn't believe in God. I certainly would have wanted to be a leader. I didn't go to university. My parents didn't want me to go, so I didn't go. I got involved in the travel business, but the travel agency, and then working for British Airways. Then I became a police officer. And so, yeah, I've fallen into this almost. Now I look back, I can see how things that I've done in the past have helped me prepare for what I'm doing here. And I am enjoying what I'm doing. But I wouldn't say I became, or I wanted to become a leader. This is where life or God has guided me. What do you do for your job? Hopefully I've explained that one with the pictures and talk that I've done so far. What time do you start and finish? I don't have a start and finish time. My alarm goes off just after 6. So I'm up and get going as soon as I can. And then, well, depending on what I've got on the day, I might finish occasionally, just after I've had my evening meal. Other times I'll have evening meetings. It all depends when people need me, really. So that is very, very flexible. Do you have a helper? Well, I would say I have loads. My ultimate helper is God. He helps me, guides me, gets me thinking about various things. Then, almost as important as God is my wife, Lindsay. I couldn't do this job without her. She is brilliant. She helps me in so many ways. And sometimes if I'm out and someone knocks on the door and says, can I speak to the church minister? Then she steps in and helps them because I'm not there and they might need help straight away. And then there's lots of other people. I don't see it as me as the leader and then everybody else somehow following. We are all doing this together. Like I'm part of the flock of sheep just as much as being a shepherd, as well as being a shepherd. So, for example, you might know Mrs. Slatter, your teacher. Her husband Mark plays keyboard. I can't play any musical instruments, so he plays the keyboard on a Sunday in our church services. So you could say he's a helper, but he's also, you know, a leader in that he leads the worship for us. So loads and loads of people. What is being a leader in the church like? It's great. It's a real privilege because I get to know lots of people. I meet them. They talk to me about their life, which I find really interesting. And I find this a privilege. But it does have its frustration sides as well. As a leader, I try to help people make the right decisions, but sometimes they make the wrong decisions and they don't listen to what I think is a good idea. And then I can't really turn to them and say, I told you so. Instead, I just have to be there to help them pick themselves up and try again. And another thing that I guess is a challenge is, while I've chosen this role, my boys haven't. And yet there's been times when my boys were bullied purely because their dad was a vicar. And that seems a bit unfair, really. I don't mind people taking the mick out of me, but it's unfair that my sons have. So, like any job, there's good bits, there's challenging bits as well. Well, why do you make people sing? I don't make people sing. We do sing a lot. I suppose when you think about it, when I woke up this morning, I heard the birds singing. And the world is full, I would say, of music. You know, there's the sound of the wind blowing through the leaves of the trees, and you know, you hear babbling brooks and things like that. And let's face it, we use music so much in our lives. When we want to celebrate our birthday, we sing happy birthday to one another. Music is a really important thing, and I just get the feeling that it's part of life. It's part of who we are, to be creative and sing. And I'm sure some of the teachers will say that, you know, wherever I'm going, I've got a tune in my head that I'm humming away to. And to me, well, if this creation of animals and the wind and the weather make these beautiful sounds, there's this lovely song at the moment called "So Will I." It's one of the recent hymns that have been written, and it says, you know, if creation sings your praises, so will I. It's a really lovely song. If you ever get a chance, go on YouTube and put in "So Will I." It speaks volumes of it's great to sing, I guess. Do leaders just boss people around? I hope I have explained no. You know, Jesus' teaching about being servants and slaves, to me, says we shouldn't. Now, I recognise, you know, I've been talking about what a church leader needs to do. I recognise that in some situations, I won't say boss around, but there's times when people have to show a bit more authority. If someone was the leader of an army going into war, it'd be no good to act as a servant, as a slave. He's got to sort of really urge his people on in a far more forceful way than I might need to do. So I recognise that there are times when people have to exert a bit more authority, I would say, rather than boss. But I don't think there's room for bossing, certainly not in the church. Do you like lots of books? Yes. I've got a number of books, as I've said, that help me with my understanding of the Christian faith. But I like lots of books, history books, fiction, particularly fantasy and science fiction, autobiographies and biographies that tell the lives of people. Humorous books. I like a lot, really. I wish I had more time to read them, because I sort of think when I read a book, I'm reading someone's thoughts, sort of thing, their ideas, and it's always great. The more I read other people's ideas, I get a much bigger picture of understanding the world and understanding God. Do you see yourselves as a leader? I guess I have to, because people see me as a leader. People will come up to me, ask a question, and expect me to give them the ultimate answer. But I see myself more as somebody who facilitates, who enables. I often describe church as being a bit like a whole group of people going on a walk, on a hike. And sometimes I will be up the front saying, come on, it's this way. And then other times I will be a bit tired, a bit jaded, and will be dragging my heels. And somebody else will say, come on, Hugh, catch up with us. We're going this way. And I see that. I learn from others just as much as they learn from me. This is the beauty. You know, I did that some earlier where I said, you know, 7 take away 3 is 4. Now, it always will be, because that is the reality. And so, you know, if you were to go to Mrs. Barrett and say, I'm sorry, I think that 7 take away 3 is 4 and a little bit. Well, we know that your answer would be wrong. But we talk about God because God is much bigger than we can ever fully understand. Then I can say, well, this is my experience of God. This is how I have come to understand how much he loves me. But if someone was to come to me and say, well, yeah, okay, but this is my experience, I can't immediately dismiss them. I need to listen to what they say. So while I might be a leader, I'm someone who's learning as well. I've got a big L plate on myself. As I said earlier, as well as being the shepherd, I also recognise I'm part of the flock. So yeah, I hope that answers that one. Who is your leader? I have someone who is responsible for me, who is the Bishop of Dorchester, who until recently was this guy. He actually retired. He had his final service on Sunday, the 4th of October. So at the moment, there isn't a Bishop of Dorchester, so the Bishop of Oxford, as it were, sort of, I guess, a slight oversight. Very, very different to having a leader. You know, I'm here in Didcot, and so the church that I lead, you know, I meet the people regularly, and even during lockdown through Zoom and stuff, I'm seeing them regularly. With the bishop, I might not see him for a year, or I might just get an email or two from him. So it's a very different setting. Just like, I guess, I am meant to be the sort of shepherd of the Ladygrove Church. He's sort of got sheep all over the place, ministers like me, that he's responsible for, but they are scattered in a huge area, so he can't sort of see us as regularly, but he's the person who is my official leader. When God made the earth, where did he live? Well, earlier I did that image of God as a cloud. As I said, I don't see God as being this thing in a cloud, but my understanding is that God is everywhere. We can't see him, but he is present in your classroom, in my dining room, all over the place. So he's not someone who needs to have a seat to sit on or to have somewhere to put his feet. He is just a spiritual being. And so he was just, well, he was just there all over the place, and that's where he will be before everything was created, and when all of creation comes to an end, he will still just be there. And then finally, how are you similar, different to other religious leaders? That's partly difficult for me to answer because I haven't spoken to people of other religions to sort of find out what they do or how they do it. But I'd go so far as to say even people who are leaders in church, I mean, the beautiful thing about church leadership, or I guess any form of working with God, is that he takes each one of us as we are. Here we go, me in my back garden, I'm not asleep, I'm having a read of a book. And so the way that I do church leadership draws on who I am, my experiences that I've had, and I guess the same would be of other leaders. You know, so the next you could meet another church leader who do things very different to me because they have different strengths and weaknesses. And so, yeah, the only way you can find out how similar or different I am is having heard from me. Well, if you've got any connection with any other church or religious leader, ask them the same sort of questions and see what answers you get from them. So there you go. That's what I understand church ministry to be. Obviously, I might have left you with a few more questions. If that's the case, well, then feel free to ask Mrs. Barrett or Miss Thomas to email me, and I'm more than happy to answer others. I'm also happy to knock up another of these film clips if there's other things that you need to know. But I will see you soon at an assembly. Take care.